Today we're going to be doing some light painting practice edits. And we're going to demonstrate it with the lens ball image. However, you'll be applying these techniques to all four of the stations. Okay. So you're going to want to pull up this light painting assignment criteria document so that you can read over all the different tools we're going to be using. You will need to use 4 out of the 7 tools, and 3 of them are required. So, for example, everyone will be raw processing their image. So that's a required tool that will be used. You will raw process the image um, at least 2 to 3 times. And the first time will be to raw process for your model to make sure you have a good exposure on your model. And the second time will be to raw process for the background and the lights that are around the model. Okay. Then you will combine both of those images in your Photoshop layers dialog box here. As you can see, there are 2. And then you will use a layer mask to then combine both those images, highlighting the good exposure on the skin as well as the background. So the idea is to combine both of these and to bring forth both exposures and balance them out in a good way where you can see nice lighting on the subject as well as nice lighting in the background. After that, I'm going to have you duplicate those 2 layers, and then I'm going to have you merge them into one. I'll be demonstrating this. Now, an optional tool you can use is called Diffuse Glow, and I'll be showing you how that is done. So, of the required tools so far, we have the raw process and we have the layer masks that will be used in this image. So, I'll be demonstrating the Diffuse Glow, and then let's move on to the fourth tool, which is opacity. This is required to be used. You'll be using opacity in some way, whether it's adding a texture layer or adding in a solid color, but you will be using opacity in some way. Blending modes. This is required to be used when applying any kind of texture or even color layer. I'll put that in. So I'll be demonstrating the blending modes. And then also retouch. This is optional. However, you probably will find that you will need to use the retouching in some part of your image. And then the final is to add some type of vignette just to make the image have nice clean edges. You will add a solid color, either black vignette or a color vignette, or you can even add in like a solid color to change some of the color in your image. For example, I used a green here, and you can see how it kind of added a little bit of green to what was once kind of more white lights. So you can either use it, and you can use it in 2 ways. You can add a vignette, or you can add to add in different color. And then again, you would want to use a blending mode and opacity with that. And then there's also another tool called Liquify that I'm going to show you. That is a new tool that is optional. And then adding a texture. I'm going to demonstrate how to add texture. And with that, you're going to want to use a blending mode and also opacity. So these are all the different tools that you can use. And you will be using these tools on all 4 stations. Okay, so let's get right into editing. So you're going to need to save this image 3144. It's a CR2 file. So if we look at the properties of this image, it's a CR2 file, okay? We are not working on a JPEG, all right? So you will need to save this image and this texture image into your drive, into your digital photo file in your folder called Light Painting Portraits Movement, okay? This is where you need to save it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to raw process this image. So I'm going to open it. And when I do that, it brings up the raw processing file. Okay, so this is, or I guess you could call this our raw processing dialog box. And with this, you're going to want to adjust. Let's come back up here. Temperature, tint, exposure, blacks, clarity, vibrance, saturation, and possibly contrast highlights and shadows, okay? So the temperature, if I want it to be warmer, I would move it to the right, and I think I do. I think I want this to be a little bit warmer. And then tint would make it more purple or more green. So maybe I'm going to bring it just down just a little bit and make it a little more green and maybe a little bit more warmer. This is the exposure. So I'm going to raw process this twice. So the first exposure, I want to expose for the skin a little bit and make sure I've got some nice value tones in the skin. And so I do when I bring this down a little bit. Maybe add a little contrast, a little bit of highlights, bring the highlights down just a tad. Shadows, no. Whites, no. Blacks, I'm going to bring down a little bit. Add a little bit of texture, add some clarity, dehaze the image maybe a little bit, some vibrance, some saturation, just a little bit, but not too much. I'm going to open the image and then I'm going to go back in and open the image a second time. And this time I am going to expose more for the background. So I'm going to bring the background up a little bit so I see more of the drape in the background and the lights, the light flutes. I'm going to give it a little more contrast, a little more clarity so those light flutes really pop. And then I'm going to go ahead and open this again. And then I'm going to select the entire image. I'm going to go to select all, edit, copy, and come back over here and go edit, paste. And that's going to paste in that layer. So now I have two versions here. One's lighter, one darker. I'm going to go ahead and add the layer mask. Okay, and I'm going to activate that layer mask. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some of the brightness from her face. I'm going to bring my opacity down to about 50%. And I'm going to remove some of the brightness from the face. Let's see here. And so that, okay. All righty. So it's just making this a little bit darker. And okay. So now what I want to do is I want to select both layers and I'm going to duplicate the layers. And then I'm going to go and immediately merge those layers and just call it merge layer. Okay. Okay. And then let's come back over here and let's see what the next tool is I'm going to be using. I added layer mask, so that's 2. That's the second required. And I merged, I duplicated and merged those layers. Now I'm going to use the Diffuse Glow So what I'm gonna do is go into Filter, and I'm going to go to Filter Gallery, and I'm gonna select Distort and go into Diffuse Glow, and I need to back out, so I'm gonna do Control minus. Control minus, I'm gonna back out. Well, that's really a lot, so I wanna adjust this, maybe not the grain, but the glow amount. That's really too much glow amount here. I'm just gonna bring that down a little bit. What the purpose of the diffuse glow is it adds this kind of cool, kind of romantic kind of glow to the image. So I'm gonna be adjusting mostly the glow amount and the clear amount here. If it's up to 20, then it's kind of normal. We don't want that. We want it to have a little bit of kind of this white glow, but not too much. So maybe 8. And let's bring the clear amount. That's a little bit too high. So let's bring that down a little bit to maybe about 1. Let's see if I put this a little higher, maybe I could bring this up a little bit. So I want to have this kind of nice glowy skin. I'm going to reduce the clear amount just a little bit. Maybe right about, let's go back. Let's zoom out and let's look at this. Let's say okay. And let's just turn it on and off. We could see how nice and glowy the skin looks. Now, I might want to just bring this opacity down just a little bit so I can show the original image underneath just a tad, just to kind of balance that out. So maybe I'll bring it up to about 70%. I think that's good. There we go. So that's a really nice effect. Let's come over here and let's look at some of the other tools, like adding in this texture layer. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our texture. Okay, and we're gonna do a select all, edit copy, come back to our image, and do a edit paste. And we're gonna say okay on that because it's a different format. We're gonna make sure show transform controls is selected, and we're gonna move this. I'm gonna rotate it so it's vertical. And then I'm gonna move it up here again, and I'm gonna completely just cover the entire image and say, check mark that in place. And now I'm gonna reduce the opacity a little bit just to see the image underneath. And I'm gonna play with my blending mode here. So we've got all different types of blending modes. We could do darken, we can do multiply, we can do color burn, linear burn, or you can just kind of click in here and just highlight it and use your little roller device on your mouse to kind of go through and see, which one might work nice with this, maybe hard light, maybe vivid light, maybe linear light. We want to add a little bit of a texture. And I'm thinking that I'm going to I'm going to zoom in on the image a little bit, Control plus. We've got a little bit of interesting texture, a pin light. It's maybe too much. Vivid light, hard light. I'm looking at the face mostly. That's what I'm kind of looking at here. Or I could remove it from the face. I'm also kind of looking at how it's impacting the background and the clothing. And I'm just going to pick one technique here, maybe color dodge, and maybe if I were to bring this up a little bit, I kind of like that, but I want to put a layer mask on this because I feel like it's making her face too bright. So I'm going to remove the texture from her face, and I'm going to leave it on some of the clothing. So I'm going to take it off the skin. I'm just going to leave the texture on the background and on the clothing. Just kind of removing it from the face a little bit and just leaving this kind of subtle texture. If I bring up the opacity, we can see what that looks like at 100%. Maybe I'll keep it at like 80. Actually, 100% works as long as I remove it from the skin a little bit, I think, 'cause I don't want it on skin, but I like the texture. Let's zoom in closely. You can see I really like the texture on the clothing and on the background. It's kind of interesting. It kind of has this kind of wall texture. So I like the way that looks, so I'll keep that. Maybe remove it a little bit from the skin there. Um, okay, so let's come back over here and look at this. Um, we are going to add in, let's say, a retouch layer. Let's do that. Okay, so we'll come back over here and we'll duplicate this merge layer and we'll call it retouch. Okay, okay. And then we'll come back and use our clone stamping tool. And what are we going to retouch? Well, one thing for sure is I want to retouch this glow in the ball here. So I'm going to go take this and just get rid of this glowy ball area that just looks weird. And this little white dot here. So I'm going Control Plus and I'm zooming in on that. And I'm just going to get rid of this glowy ball look to it here. Okay. And because this retouch is like put this at 100% on the retouch. Okay. Back, just because the merge layer right here, remember, is 70%. And when we made the retouch, we had it at, we need to put that up to 100% so we can really see what we're retouching. And then Control minus. What else do I need to retouch? Maybe this little glow here. That cleans up the lens ball a little bit. Anything else in the fabric? Not really. Maybe right here on the clothing, some little white dots. You might have to kind of go in on multiple layers here to retouch. That might be actually a part of the texture layer. It looks fine. Right here on the shirt, little white specks. Right here on the shirt, little white specks. Yep, that looks good. Control minus, go out. Alrighty. And then I'm going to bring down this opacity a little bit to like 70 again. I think that looks okay. And then let's see, one more tool is this green layer. I'm going to go ahead and add in like a solid green and just kind of impact the green lines in the back of the image a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add in a solid color. I'm going to make it green. I'm going to bring it up here on this layer. I'm going to bring the opacity down to like, and I'm going to adjust the blending mode here. And let's see, what do I want it on? Maybe overlay, maybe soft light, maybe vivid light. Yeah, I think I'm going to do soft light, and I'm going to bring the opacity down a little more. And then I'm going to just remove some of the green from the areas I don't want it, like on the skin, on the hair, just keeping it only on the background. Okay, and then I'm going to add in another solid color. This time it's going to be black because I want to, I'm going to bring this opacity down so I can see what I'm doing a little bit because I want to keep the, I want to remove that table from the side. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to bring this opacity back to 100%. And I don't want to see that table, that brown table in the image, so I'm just going to remove it. If I make a mistake, I can go back in with white and just kind of bring it like this. There we go. And maybe just round these edges here a little bit, but not where the face is. I want to keep that nice and solid. And then also up here, there we go. I don't want to see any of that brown table. And then there's one last tool that I want to show you. It's called Liquify. Um, if we go to our retouch layer and we duplicate this layer, we're going to call it Liquify. Okay. And we're going to come over here to filter Liquify. And you need to make sure you click on advanced mode. Okay. Um, so make sure that you have all these tools available to you here. This is the forward warp, this is the reconstruction tool, and this is the smoothing tool, twirling tool, pucker, bloat, push to the left, freeze mask, thaw mask, face tool. Okay. So you're mostly going to be using just these, and this reconstruct tool is good for like fixing something you don't like. This is our brush size here and our density and our pressure. So I'm going to start with this tool here, and I'm going to show you just like how you can move this a little bit. You see that? That's called the forward warp, or if you don't like it, you can just reconstruct it by undoing it. Okay? So let's say I want to like move this up a little bit. Maybe move this one a little bit, but you don't want to distort the background, otherwise it looks weird. So be careful about that. So maybe not that one there. Um, you could bring this a little bit, but you don't want to distort the mirror, so you got to be kind of careful. So maybe bring these up a little bit, like that. Um, maybe bring this up a little bit. And if you just like that, then you can, if you don't, you can just say restore all, and it'll undo it, or come back here with the reconstruct tool and undo it, and you'll be fine. Once you're done, just click OK, and there we go. And we've got the Liquify tool here. We can see how it's kind of adjusted it a little bit and just changed the shape of the light flute in the background. And then you are done. And make sure you show this image to me so that you can get points.